Karen gets treated like she treated everyone else. I used to think living in a quiet suburban neighborhood was the dream. You know the kind. Tree-lined streets, neatly trimmed hedges, families waving at each other while walking their dogs, and kids riding bikes in the cul-de-sac. I bought my house 5 years ago, believing I'd found my slice of peace. And then Karen moved in. Now, before I go on, let me make one thing clear. When I say Karen, I don't mean that as some playful insult. I mean she was the absolute textbook definition of one. Entitled, loud, nosy, demanding, constantly inserting herself in everyone's business. She didn't just live in the neighborhood, she acted like she owned it. When her family first arrived, most of us tried to be welcoming. A new family meant potential new friends, new kids for the block to play with. But within weeks, it became clear Karen wasn't here to be part of the neighborhood. She was here to control it. Karen's crusade started small. She complained about people's lawns. Too long, she'd say, not properly edged. Never mind that she let weeds grow in her own flower beds. Then she targeted trash bins, demanding they be brought in within 30 minutes of collection, because otherwise it makes the neighborhood look bad. It escalated from there. One neighbor, Jeff, had a pickup truck he parked in his driveway. Perfectly legal, no issues. But Karen decided it was an eyesore and called the homeowners association every week to complain. Another neighbor, Susan, liked to decorate her porch with seasonal decorations, pumpkins in the fall, fairy lights in the winter. Karen wrote anonymous notes demanding she take them down, claiming they violated aesthetic standards. The worst, though, was how she treated people face to face. She barked orders at kids who weren't hers, telling them not to ride their scooters too close to her property. She scolded dog walkers for letting their pets sniff her grass. And heaven forbid anyone park in front of her house, even though it was a public street. Karen thrived on making others miserable, and the more we tried to ignore her, the bolder she became. I managed to stay out of Karen's crosshairs for a while. I kept my yard tidy, stayed polite, and avoided direct conflict. But inevitably, she found a reason to target me. It started with my fence. I had a perfectly good wooden fence separating my backyard from hers. It wasn't falling apart, it wasn't an eyesore, but Karen decided it was too tall. She marched up to my door one Saturday morning and announced, "You need to replace that fence. It ruins the view from my kitchen." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Next came my car. I drive a slightly older sedan, not fancy, but reliable. One day, I found a note taped to my windshield. In big, angry letters, it said, open quote, "Your car is bringing down the value of this neighborhood. Get something newer or park it somewhere else." Close quote. That was the first time I realized just how deep her entitlement ran. But the real breaking point came when she called animal control on my dog. My golden retriever, Max, is the friendliest dog on the planet. He doesn't bark excessively, doesn't roam, doesn't bother anyone. But Karen claimed he was aggressive and a danger to the community. I had to take time off work to deal with the inspector, who thankfully saw immediately that her complaint was baseless. But that was it for me. Karen had gone too far. For weeks, I stewed in anger. Part of me wanted to lash out, to yell at her, to give her a taste of her own medicine. But I knew that would only make things worse. Karen thrived on drama. Confrontation was her fuel. No, if I wanted real satisfaction, I had to be smarter. That's when the idea came to me. What if Karen finally got treated the exact same way she treated everyone else? What if every complaint she dished out came back to her tenfold? I didn't need to be the one to take her down. I just needed to shine a light on her hypocrisy. And luckily, my neighbors were more than ready to help. I wasn't the only one Karen had wronged. Nearly everyone on the block had a story. Jeff with his truck, Susan with her decorations, the Johnson kids who couldn't play near her yard, even old Mrs. Patel, who got scolded for watering her flowers too early in the morning. So one evening, I invited a few neighbors over for drinks. We sat in my backyard, swapped Karen horror stories, and realized we all shared the same thought. Enough was enough. Together, we formed what we jokingly called the Neighborhood Alliance. Our mission was simple: give Karen a taste of her own medicine. We didn't want to harass her or do anything illegal. We just wanted to mirror her behavior right back at her. If she could dish it, she should be able to take it. Or so we thought. The first step was petty but effective. Remember how Karen hated trash bins being left out? Well, we all made a point of leaving ours out just a little longer, but only on the side of the street visible from her house. Then, we turned her own game against her. Every time Karen's lawn got even slightly shaggy, someone would call the HOA. When her Christmas lights stayed up past January 1st, another neighbor reported her. Jeff parked his truck directly across from her house. Perfectly legal, but it drove her insane. Susan put up the brightest, most over-the-top decorations she could find, right in full view of Karen's living room. Inflatable Santas, glowing pumpkins, even a giant inflatable flamingo in summer. As for me, I filed a noise complaint about the constant shouting she directed at other people's kids. It didn't take long for the walls of Karen's empire to start crumbling. At first, Karen tried to fight back. She stormed over to Jeff's house, demanding he move his truck. Jeff calmly reminded her it was public parking and closed the door in her face. She left angry notes on Susan's decorations, only for Susan to tape them right back on Karen's front door. She called the HOA about our collective rule violations, but by then, we had all documented her own. The HOA quickly grew tired of her constant complaints and started fining her instead. Karen wasn't used to being on the receiving end, and it showed. One afternoon, I caught her in her driveway, screaming into her phone, red-faced, gesturing wildly. Later, another neighbor told me she was ranting to the HOA president about harassment. But what really made me smile was when animal control showed up at her door. Turns out she hadn't been picking up after her own dog, and several neighbors filed complaints. Watching her scramble to explain herself to the inspector was pure poetry. Karen's downfall wasn't a single dramatic explosion. It was a slow, steady unraveling. The more the neighborhood mirrored her behavior, the more isolated she became. People stopped waving at her, stopped inviting her to block parties, stopped acknowledging her presence altogether. Her husband, who had mostly stayed out of the drama, looked increasingly embarrassed whenever she caused a scene. Her kids, once bossy like their mother, started avoiding the other children out of sheer shame. Finally, after months of escalating tension, Karen cracked. One Saturday morning, she stood in the middle of the cul-de-sac, screaming at anyone within earshot about how unfairly she was being treated. "This neighborhood is toxic! You're all bullying me!" she shouted, pointing fingers like a wild conductor. But instead of rallying behind her, the neighbors just stared. Some shook their heads, others walked away. For the first time, Karen realized no one was on her side. A few months later, a for sale sign went up in Karen's yard. She couldn't take it anymore. Whether it was the fines, the isolation, or simply the fact that her tactics didn't work anymore, she packed up and left. The day the moving trucks rolled in was the happiest day the neighborhood had seen in years. People actually threw an impromptu block party just to celebrate. We grilled burgers, played music, and toasted to our freedom. As for me, I stood on my porch, watching the trucks pull away, and felt a satisfaction deeper than I'd expected. Not because Karen was gone, but because we'd proven a point. You can only push people so far before they push back. Karen spent years treating everyone like dirt, convinced she was untouchable. In the end, she got treated exactly the way she treated everyone else, and she couldn't handle it. And that, to me, was the sweetest revenge of all. Like and subscribe, share if this happened to you or someone you know.